Good evening. It's so nice to be back. Welcome to Wicked Women. We've been gone for a while. We had a little bit of a sabbatical for the summer. So we were gone for August, but Val and I needed a break, and Carly. And we took a little bit of a break, but we're back. It's so nice to be back. How is everybody doing? Did you have a good summer? Today is the 1st of September, and it's autumnal. It's now autumnal season, and I'm super happy about that because I absolutely love autumn. So happy autumn, happy first day of autumn to everybody. It's just gone a smidgen after 10 o'clock here in London, UK, and we're live. We're coming to you live from YouTube on Wicked Women 888, and also from The Dark Huntress on YouTube, and also from Twitter, Wicked Women 888 as well. I'm going to bring in my lovely companion because she's had a few issues tonight. We actually thought it was just going to be me on my lonesome. And I was like, please don't do that to me, Val. Please don't do it. But by the gracious universe, they heard us, and I'm going to bring in my lovely companion and my fellow Wicked, the lovely Val. How's my girl?
I'm here. I'm sweating, but I'm here.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I'm exactly the same. I've got the fan on here. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Alison.
I got the fan on behind me, but it ain't doing a whole lot.
I've got it on here, and it's not doing much either for me here either. It's nice to be back, Val.
It is. It is. I mean, it's, I think it's always good to have a little vacation, a little sabbatical, if you will. But, it's good to get back to. Yeah.
I really miss doing Wicked Women, because not only did I take a sabbatical from Wicked Women, I took a sabbatical from Robertson because Scotty had the children home. So we weren't doing it either. So we're back on Tuesday. So I'm always like, all of 1 week of September, everything started. It's like now we've got Robertson back on Tuesday, and Wicked Women first back today. We're first in on the first day getting of the month.
And Saturday, I'm starting Miss Legends and Paranormal back. So
that's good to hear. That's good to hear. And you had a little break. I saw a few pictures of you on the beach.
Me, my mom, and my girls took a little vacation. We left on my birthday, which was last Sunday, and drove down to Myrtle Beach and stayed. We come home Thursday.
It looks beautiful.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful spending time with them. It really was.
And you look so happy. And, I had a couple of weeks off, and I went to the beach, and, but I kept thinking on a Sunday, I should be doing something, even when I was, taking some time off. But here we are. We're back.
Oh, driving.
And we took a break because we were doing our witch series, and then we took a break, and we do have the Power of the Witch will be coming back. We will finish that. Hopefully the lovely Carly will be here for us, because that was her segment, which was the European witches that she was doing. So we will be looking at it again in October, being the month.
We have to save something for Halloween season.
Well, we do.
For October.
We've got a few things, but these days, Val, everyone says he treats me like a queen. I deserve to be treated like a queen. And that's lovely, and that's quite new. But we were talking the other day about what about the wicked queens, and obviously we're using that from our namesake, Wicked Women.
Sure.
The wicked queens of history. Now everybody knows Snow White's stepmother, the queen, mirror, mirror on the wall, how evil she was and everything. But we're looking at some of the women in history who were queens, women of power, women of greatness. And they have a reputation for being evil, for being, wicked, and almost demonizing them in some way. So we thought we'd have a look at them, and you and I both picked a few. We may get through all of them, we may not. And which ones were you drawn to and why?
Well, I mean, it sounds weird to say my favorite one, but the one that I always kind of am drawn to is Elizabeth Bathory.
Right.
The Bloody Countess. She wasn't technically a queen, but, she ruled over subjects, and she was a countess. So, pretty much.
Almost a queen. Almost a queen.
Almost a queen. Always almost a queen.
It's weird because
And
when
then-
we were looking yesterday, we found a list of women. There's so many that have got under the title of evil.
Yeah. But I think even now, people that do things that other people may not approve of, may not like, still yet people in power are considered that way. So I think you have to take everything you read and hear with a grain of salt, because it could be just someone that didn't necessarily like them.
Women seem to get a bad press, don't they? Especially women of power. I mean,
Yeah.
you at the moment in America, it's very topical because you have your vice president, the Harris. Forgive me with her forgetting her first name, but she is getting a lot of demonizing in some ways. And over here we've just heard that Keir Starmer, who's the Prime Minister of the UK, took out Margaret Thatcher's picture from Downing Street. Now we've had many prime ministers and three lady ones now, but he took it out. And it's almost like, how could you do that? Regardless, she was a prime minister, a woman of power, a woman of greatness. Yeah. But he's almost demonized her by taking her out.
Well, I mean, even through history, with the ancient Egyptians, when a new ruler came in, they destroyed the old rulers, statues, the faces on the hieroglyphics. They destroyed it if they didn't have the same opinions.
Yeah.
So they tried to pretty much erase that pharaoh from history. Yeah. I'm in here now. You don't need to think about anybody else. So, I don't know if people honestly think that they can erase history or change the way people think by doing that. Because I think a lot of times, even with statues and all those things that are happening now, it's almost like they're trying to erase what happened. Yes. And make everybody think the way they do.
And it's very easy to demonize a woman.
Sure.
And because over history, so many women have been demonized. I'm just going to bring up two. Obviously, Camilla Parker Bowles, who's actually married to the current King of England. She has been demonized somewhat terrible as being a wicked woman. She split up Princess Diana and Prince Charles's marriage, and she's been demonized over the years. Whether or not 100% everything we're told is true, I don't know. But there's one woman in current history, even though she's queen, is still demonized for that. So looking at queens, talking about the current one, not that I think she probably worries about that anymore. One of the first ones I want to look at is Mary Tudor. which was Bloody Mary.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got my bins on because I've got my notes and my bits and pieces up, because I love the Tudors. They're one of my favourites. But Mary Tudor is not popular. Elizabeth is the more popular one. Mary Tudor is the daughter of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. She was by his first marriage. And this woman has had did have 5 stepmothers. That's a lot.
Wow. That's a lot.
It's bad enough to have one stepmother. This lady had 5. And I think that, history portrays her as Bloody Mary because she's well known for burning Protestants on the funeral pyre, because obviously she wanted to have England be turned back to Catholic. But actually, in some ways, I think she's quite tragic. She's quite a tragic figure to look at, Mary Tudor. When she was born, he was over the moon. Henry VIII was over the moon to have a child, because Catherine of Aragon had lost a lot of children. She'd miscarried a lot of children. She had sons and that had been born and then died. So to actually have a healthy baby, so she was very much wanted, and he very much worshipped her. She was like his little princess. And so she was cherished. She was born in February 1516 to doting parents and raised as a Catholic. She was known to be incredibly intelligent, quite precocious, and she could translate Latin by the time she was 9. Now, I don't know about you, but Latin's pretty tough going.
Latin's pretty bad, yeah.
She was very gifted and educated thanks to her mother, who also did a lot of her tutoring. In her lifetime, she was betrothed to various people for political purposes. So Francis I of France, Charles V of Spain, and Henry, Duke of Orleans. As we know in history, Val, marriage was the way to build your wealth and your position.
Well, I think if you were, a king and you happened to have more than one daughter,
yeah,
even though they say, they didn't want daughters, I think they still had an advantage when they had daughters, because that was a big
it was
selling point. Do this and you can have one of my daughters, even if it never came about.
Well, absolutely. I was just about to say that. All her proposed marriages were dissolved due to political climate. So for her, she was going to get married, then she was not. Then she was going to get married, then she wasn't. She was basically a pawn. And she was very hurt. She was very hurt. Her feelings got hurt because basically, she felt like, well, nobody wants me. She had her own court in Ludlow, which as Princess of Wales, that's where the court is of Prince or Princess of Wales, is in Ludlow, while she waited to be married. Well, obviously, as we well know with history, Catherine of Aragon could not bear a son, sadly, a living son to Henry VIII. And his eye was taken by many women, but one especially, which would be his future second wife, Anne Boleyn. Herself demonized as a queen. And so much is known about Anne Boleyn. So that's why I didn't actually pick Anne, although she's one of my favorites. So he wanted to get rid of Catherine, and he did. And he claimed his marriage was incestuous, and he broke with the Roman Church and married Anne Boleyn, making Mary a bastard. And she went down from princess to Lady Mary. And there were times that she was terrified for her life. She was so scared that she was going to end up in the Tower. Anne Boleyn was going to have her, killed or whatever. She wasn't allowed to see her mother. She never saw her mother again, which would have surely broken her heart. And then she had a new sister to compare with, who was, now the Princess of Wales and had taken her position. And she was forced to be Mary's guardian, like a nanny. And can you imagine having your mother taken away from you? You're not allowed to see her. You're not a princess anymore. You're a bastard. And basically, you've got to look after this baby. She's now the Princess of Wales. She's in line. You're nothing. As a young girl, that must have been a lot of emotional stuff being pushed down, pushed down, pushed down.
Well, you would think it would have to make her feel even worse about herself.
Yeah.
First, I'm not, my mother's not good enough. Therefore, I'm not good enough.
Yep.
And then, the only thing I'm good for is being a nanny. And, it would make you resent, I'm sure, that child.
Amazingly, they had some sort of good relationship when they were younger, for sure. But she was heartbroken in 1536, Mary, when her mother died, and she wasn't even allowed to go and see her. And to make matters worse, they both, Henry and Anne, dressed in yellow the next day to symbolize joy after Catherine's death. So by now, this is a young woman. She's in her teens. She has also been shut away and doesn't want her near Henry. So she's very, very secluded. And I would imagine feeling quite left out. Obviously, when Anne was beheaded and died, when he married Jane Seymour, her new stepmother, Jane Seymour, brought her back into court and worked on that relationship and declare that she was the true daughter of Henry VIII. And then she went through, obviously, like Anne of Cleves, Catherine Howard, who she didn't get on with. And imagine being your father marrying a young daughter, a young wife, of about 15, and you have to bow to her. And by then she still didn't have a husband. So this is a woman that's, basically been left alone, shut out and pushed away. And then her brother is born. Edward is born, and she is now realizing her place is Edward, Elizabeth, and her. So she had a lot of stepmothers, and I imagine some of them were very good to her. Catherine Parr was very good to her. Anne of Cleves was very good to her. Catherine Howard, not so, as well as Jane Seymour was very, very good. She had a lot of ill health. She had depression. I would imagine. She had a lot of menstrual problems as well. She was in a bad way. So when Edward, I got to remember his name now. I'm going to get my Edwards. I think it's Edward Tudor. When he died early, he named Lady Jane Grey as his heir, or rather, he was forced to name Lady Jane Grey as his heir. And that didn't go down well with Mary, because she knew her father's will, which was Edward, herself, and then Elizabeth. So she fought to get her position, which she did. She became the next Queen of England. And unfortunately, for her to have a successful marriage to Philip of Spain and not have a pretender, she put Lady Jane Grey in the Tower, and eventually had to have her beheaded, which was quite awful. So that didn't do much for her. That really didn't do much for her at all. And, here she was married. She married in Winchester Cathedral to Philip of Spain, who wasn't really attracted to her, didn't really want to marry her, but because of Spain and England and bringing back the Catholic Church, they married each other. Now, unfortunately, Mary tried desperately to keep Lady Jane Grey alive. She did not want to kill her, because she knew if she did, what was coming. But Lady Jane Grey, at 16, had her head taken off. So she tried very much to have children. She couldn't get pregnant. And when she did think she was pregnant, she would look, I'm pregnant, my belly's big and everything. And it turned out to be both times phantom pregnancies, or perhaps a tumor. They don't know. In this time of her being married, they were desperately unhappy. England's government that we had a Catholic queen and a Catholic king consort. They were really, really not happy about that. And she wanted to bring back England to be a Catholic country. And so she would give people a choice: renounce your Protestant faith. If you do not, you are seen as a heretic and you will be burnt at the stake. And unfortunately, a lot of people did not want to go back to the Catholic Church and to Rome. And unfortunately, Mary had a proclamation saying, look, please convert. I don't want to do this, but if you do. And she burned 280 Protestants at the stake. They were given a choice: exile, repentance, conversion back to Catholic, or death. Hundreds, which I would have done, hundreds chose exile. I'd have been the first boat out. But those who did not were, and back then we're talking about a church which was your immortal soul. If you were a Protestant or Catholic and you turned your back on your religion or recanted it, that was your immortal soul gone.
Yeah.
They were thought they were going to burn in hell. So it was very serious for them to do that. So they chose to stay. They sadly were executed. Women and men were burned to death. Most of them, young and old, posed no significant political threat. And around 30 others died of illness in prison. Those executions destroyed what was left of Mary's image and changed the public perception of the Catholic Church for the worse. And from that time forward, Queen Mary of England was known as Bloody Mary. She had blood on her hands. And she couldn't do it. She couldn't get her foot right after that. Her pregnancies were all false. Philip of Spain left her, just walked out of England and said, nope, not coming back. And she was grief-stricken, knowing that she was never going to become a mother, and her husband had left her. She'd become quite ill. She'd gone through it because she was our first proper queen. We'd had Matilda in the past, but she was the first proper as seen as queen. And she finally succumbed to illness and died on November the 17th, 1558, at the age of 42. And they believe that she may have been suffering from ovarian or uterine cancer. She asked that her mother's body be buried and moved to be with her in Westminster Abbey. The final request was ignored, and she was ultimately buried underneath Elizabeth in 1603 in Westminster Abbey in London. And Val, it's easy to see why people hate Mary, and she has such a wicked reputation of being an evil woman, because she killed a 16-year-old woman who was innocent and was basically used as another political pawn. She used innocent people and executed them basically on their religion. And I think because she had been persecuted for her own beliefs, she was like, well, it's happened to me. And, and she actually said, I will bring this country back into the Holy Church. So I think that she'd had a lot of trauma in her life, a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, a lot of being pushed aside, looked under, not wanted. She'd always been very good to the poor and was merciful, apparently, on multiple occasions, and absolutely wanted to release Lady Jane Grey. But her father, Lady Jane Grey's father, was scheming to get Elizabeth out of prison and put her on the throne and not of Mary. She had no choice. So due to the number of people who were executed during her 5-year reign, that's all it was, 5 years, she's now known as one of the wicked queens. So do we see as burning people at the stake, as in experiencing the fires of hell, as the last chance of redemption before you get to heaven? We got to burn it out of you before you get to heaven. Is there any justification for murdering hundreds of innocent people?
I think back then they saw it as purifying the soul. If you want change, we will make you change. We will purify, purify by fire. So your soul will go where we say it's going to go, pretty much.
Yeah.
Instead of, just killing them. They thought that fire purified their soul.
Yeah.
And that was their way, into heaven. And apparently it was whether you wanted to or not. Whether that's what whether that's what you wanted or not, that's what you're going to do.
I think that Mary's seen as a cruel and spiteful woman, but she truly had a lifetime of sorrow, abuse, disappointment, family problems, illness. She was stripped of her humanity and any goodness that she might have had.
Do you think any of it was caused by maybe a little bit of revenge going on?
Well, I think if you got into power after having all of that taken from you, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It would be like, no, it's my turn.
But in some ways, I
enjoyed that.
Yeah. But I think a lot of times when we look back on things from the past, I think there could have been a whole lot of mental illness going on, from slight all the way up to, what is it, Maria the Mad? I mean, she was nuts, and her mother was. So, I feel like there's so many different aspects of it that certain things may not have been totally their fault. Plus, they were raised in a time when they watched their fathers and their mothers do these things. And, as a queen, they watched other queens and kings do the same thing. So, for her listening to the church, okay, we have to, if they won't convert, we must cleanse them by fire. Or, we want this pure. We want these people around us. So we have to weed them out. So I think they had a lot. It wasn't all.
I think also as well, she had a lot going against her, because first of all, she was seen as illegitimate from her parents' marriage. She knew she wasn't going to be able to marry anyone unless she wanted to get the Catholic Church back. So she knew she had to get rid of the Protestant people. She knew she had to get rid of the Protestant faith, and bring it back. But I actually think that one of the last, I picked up this statement because it sort of says a lot here. Even without the tarnished reputation of the executions, her public image and legacy was doomed because of her heavily contested right to the throne, illegitimacy, religious beliefs, her publicly hated marriage, 2 phantom pregnancies, an unintentional war with France, which resulted in the loss of an entire region, and the following popular and prosperous reign, I get that right now, prosperous reign of Queen Elizabeth, good Queen Elizabeth I. So was Mary a villain or a victim of historical bias? And I think she's a bit of both. I think this is a woman who's very traumatized, went through a hell of a lot. And I think that as a woman, she's very much been demonized, but you cannot take away that burning people for their faith, and beheading a 16-year-old girl who was innocent. Back then, different times, different people, different ways. So she's in the maybe wicked. I wouldn't say that she's evil, but she's definitely in the wicked. Maybe she did some wicked.
I think she started out as the victim, and ended up with that mentality You know,
Yeah.
the everything that happened to her kind of led up to her being that, not necessarily, like you said, evil, but, you know, that the kind of person, maybe she was totally different before all this happened, you know, and it changed her
Well,
into something else.
interesting enough, Mary Tudor, mother was Catherine of Aragon. And we are going to look at the other one, which was Isabella of Spain, Isabella of Castile. But before we go to her, so she came from a strong line of very strong, dominant women who were very much big believers in the Catholic faith.
Right.
And she believed she was carrying on that legacy. Who have you got, Val? Which woman which queen did you feel drawn to?
Actually, I have two, and one is actually Queen Isabella the First. And the other one is Elizabeth Bathory. And I've spoke a little bit about Elizabeth Bathory, or the Bloody Countess, before. She's not technically a queen, but she is close enough. She's a countess. She was born in 1560, and she was born in Hungary. And she wasn't like a royal, but she was a noble woman. She was a noble woman. Her uncle was the King of Poland. Her nephew was the Prince in Transylvania. So, you know, she did grow up kind of royally, you know, not by blood, but in 1575, when she was 15, she married Nadasti. Her husband was a soldier, and he was also, I guess, he was a count. He was a count in Hungary, and so they kind of made a royal couple because, you know, he was a count, she was a noble lady, so she became countess. I've got hair on my lip. But he was away a lot. He was away at war a lot. And being a soldier, of course, they learn a lot of torture techniques. So more than likely he taught her, because they were kind of the same mind. They were not sweet people. They were both kind of deranged a little bit. So I think he taught her, you know, quite a bit of her torture techniques that she would use later.
Wow.
She ruled with him until he died. And when he died, she took everything that he had taught her about. I mean, she was well educated. You know, he had taught her so much. She took over control of all their estates. So it was just her. Now, she was accused of, I mean, a long list of crimes. Once he died, I guess she kind of sought more control for herself. She had a few of her servants that she completely controlled, and they did anything she needed and wanted. So she was accused of many, many, many crimes, and I'm going to tell some, and I don't know why I like this one. No. That's why I said at the beginning, you know, it sounds kind of weird that I'm kind of drawn to this woman, but, you know. But her crimes were against her female servants, and she also committed crimes against minor noble women. They would come to her estates for like training and education, and their families would send them to her because she offered them further their education and train them in ways of I guess running estates, things like that, business things. But some of her crimes were they were against the females. There was very few against the males. But she would cover some in honey. Some of her victims she would cover in honey and put them outside and just leave them outside for the insects to kind of devour, which had to be horrific. That would have to be horrific.
Yeah.
If it was in the colder weather, she would force them to disrobe and get in ice baths. And I mean, you can imagine how cold a castle is in the winter out there in Hungary.
Oh, yes.
It's cold anyway. She would force them to disrobe and get in ice baths until they froze to death. She would take needles and drive them under fingernails.
Yes, that's a particular nasty way.
Yeah. She would cut their noses off, their lips off.
Wow.
She would whip them with those stinging nettles. She would literally bite them. Breasts, shoulders, neck. I mean, she would literally ravenous bite them. She would burn them different spots. She would burn their flesh. She even burnt genitals of some of them. They do think now, looking back, they think that she was kind of not necessarily schizophrenic, but she had some sort of mental illness.
100%. Absolutely.
And it was, of course, she enjoyed doing this. And they think it was partly sexual pleasure for her because of the way she would do things.
Yeah.
Now, Count Thurzo, he was the head of the Hungary judicial system. They started getting rumors and questions about the noble women that were going missing. Their families would send them there for education and all this, and they never returned. So once the nobles started making claims, Count Thurzo went in 1610. Now, she was married in 1575. This was in 1610. So, she'd been doing this for many, many years before anyone actually decided to investigate. I guess that's what you would call it. But in 1610, this count surprises her at her castle. Just shows up. And he went to talk to her about the noble women, because all of the servants that she, tortured and killed, they didn't investigate those, because they really were, they didn't concern themselves with servants at that time. It was only when the noble women started going missing, that's when they decided to investigate. So apparently he shows up at her house, and she is kind of in the middle of torturing a victim.
Wow.
When he shows up. So he not only caught her in the act, he also sent people to search the castle, and they start finding body parts, mutilated, dead bodies all over the castle. She had been burying them, but she kind of run out of space. So they were just in the castle, and I can't imagine how that would smell, to be in the castle full of mutilated bodies.
100%. That would be awful.
Oh gosh. But once he caught her in the act and started finding all these things, he immediately arrested her. Now her status as a countess made it so she wasn't jailed. She was imprisoned in her home. Of course, she couldn't bring anybody else in, so it stopped the killings, but she was imprisoned in her home, because they didn't imprison in a jail, like a common criminal.
Yeah.
They were still, yet even after everything she did, she was still a countess. So she was still treated as better than other criminals. Now, one of the witnesses that they spoke to said that Bathory herself kept a journal, and she listed all of her victims. I don't know if she, that to me sounds like a serial killer would write down names and what all happened to them, as a go back and read type thing.
It's like a trophy book.
Kind of, yeah. But that witness said that Bathory herself had listed at least 650 victims. Yeah. So that was that. I would say it was more than that.
Sounds like it.
Just because, who knows beforehand, before her husband died, it was said that she didn't start all this till after her husband died. But it seems like she progressed pretty good after he died. So I would imagine maybe both of them before.
Did she have children?
I don't think so. I can't remember. I don't know why I didn't write that down.
I was going to say, like, if she had, I wondered if they actually survived it.
You know what? Let's see.
She sounds, I've never heard, believe it or not, I've never heard of this lady, and I need to check her out. Because she was on the list. She was on the list of one of the most wicked, wasn't she?
Yeah. And, you can see why.
Yeah. But as you say, this sounds like that's not the act a normal person.
Right. Actually, she did have children. 1, 2, 3, 4 or more. It doesn't say all, it just says 4 or more. And she very well could have had, you know, more that didn't survive, perhaps. So he imprisoned her in 1610, and her body was found in her castle in
It's not great.
1640.
Still see me. If you can, let me know in the comments. My signal I can see is going up and down, and we do not have a storm here in the UK. So, Val, are you back? Because it's coming and going.
Can you see me?
I can see you.
Okay.
You're back in the room. You're back in the room.
Her body was found in 1614, the same place in her castle where she had been imprisoned since 1610. Let's see.
So it's
She was
definitely a case of
54.
getting away with it because she had power, and she could
Yeah.
get away with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the only thing really that they did to her was make it so she couldn't kill again. She was still in her own home, and you know that they're not going to just leave her there by herself. She'll have her servants.
Or someone also to keep an eye on her, I would imagine, as well.
But the ones that her servants that helped her, they were interrogated. Some were imprisoned. Huh?
I was just saying goodbye to Sandra.
Some were imprisoned. Some were executed on the spot. I think there was only one that was not hanged.
Wow. So this woman, I mean, you've obviously she resonates, something about her story that resonates with you. What is it about her, Elizabeth Banbury, that resonates with you? Why did you feel drawn to her?
Honestly, I think it's sad but true. I have this macabre interest in serial killers. And I think that's why she kind of stuck out to me. Because it's not like she killed for power. She had it.
Yeah.
She didn't kill for land or money, or she killed because she felt the need to kill. She killed for herself.
Yes.
And I think the way the mind works intrigues me. She doesn't seem like she killed just because she could.
Yeah.
Because of the different ways, she went about things. It's almost like she took pure enjoyment from it.
It sounds like it. And I also think to leave body parts around the castle as well says a lot, because in the old days, as we well know, they would leave bodies outside, hanging outside castles. They would put their heads on spikes, they would cut their hang, drawn and quarter, and then send one here and one there. So this is something they did do, but it seems that a woman is doing this, and she's leaving these body parts, which would have smelled horrific.
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. That would just
absolutely awful. So she's definitely on the wicked list.
But I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that her husband, he either just accepted her the way she was, because she had to have those characteristics before.
He was probably a bit scared, I would imagine, that he was going to end up,
He was
somewhere
either
else.
like that or they were like Bonnie and Clyde. They both
Sure.
were of same mind.
And that's very much like the Fred West and Rosemary West.
Exactly.
Yeah, very much a team.
So it intrigues me that anyone could be that heinous towards someone. I can't, and it's not that I am, building her up as this wonderful person. She was horrendous, but I've always been intrigued by their mind. Why, by the way a serial killer, their mind works. And back then, you could get away with a lot more than you get away with now.
Yeah, thankfully.
Yeah. So, the more power you had, the more you got away with.
Well, she's definitely on the naughty list, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
So let's look at our next queen, which actually she has I didn't know about this one. When I went to Calgary, my ex-husband worked at a restaurant called Osteria di Medici. And I was like, oh, not heard of that. And they said it's after Catherine de Medici. And I was like, need to check this lady out. So I've kind of heard things about Catherine de Medici along the way. And yet again, it's another case of like, is this lady wicked or was she empowered? Catherine get this right. Catherine de Medici was orphaned only weeks after her birth. She was passed around to several relatives, several covenants. She had a pretty rough start in life. She maintained little control over her destiny. She was born into the powerful Italian Medici family, whose family members included 2 popes. She was an only child, and she bore the brunt of her family's successes and failures. When they lost power and control of Florence, they took Catherine hostage, and this poor girl was paraded through the streets on a donkey, and she served as a symbol to her family's defeats. I mean, as a child on a mule with the crowd screaming at you and baying at you is pretty scary. She then was sent to a convent where Pope Clement, her great uncle, took back Florence with the help of Charles V of Spain, and then set out to find her a husband. Well, at 14. She married. Yeah, she's an old maid at 14. She married 15-year-old Henry, Duke of Orleans, heir to the French throne. Eager for a happy union, Catherine discovered something different. Her husband loved another woman called Diane de Poitiers, his childhood governess, and Henry and Di did little to hide their affair from Catherine. And once he was crowned king, he needed an heir, obviously. So that's where Catherine came into, like, we need an heir from you. So she thought that if she had a child, this would put an end to the affair, but it did not. And she had to share her husband while she was trying to provide him with an heir. It took 10 years.
That kind of sounds a little familiar.
It took 10 years to get an heir. And in desperation, she turned to methods that kind of alarmed the French. She actually went to see Nostradamus. She also used the necromancer Cosimo Ruggiero, if I've spelled that right, Ruggieri. I think that's right, Ruggieri. Probably that's it. Cosimo Ruggieri. My Italian is not great tonight. And the seer Nostradamus.
Mine is not great anytime.
She went great lengths to bear a child. She drank the urine of pregnant mules, wore a talisman made of goat's blood, metals, and human blood. And as a Catholic people, the French saw her practices as witchcraft. And she was then deemed as a practitioner of the dark arts. Finally, a true diagnosis for the lack of pregnancy came to light. had nothing to do with her whatsoever. He suffered from a deformity of the penis. We've lost Val. Val, come back. After medically consulting regarding sexual positions to accommodate the situation, the couple actually conceived 10 children. Well, they got there in the end. 7 actually survived. Sadly, when her husband died from a brain infection caused by a wound to the eye, which she got through jousting, she went into deep mourning. And it said it is her grief prevented her. I'll just bring up my note again. That's right. Prevented her from attending the coronation of her eldest son, Francis II. But it didn't take long for Catherine to realize that she was now the mother of the king and several more heirs. So she could actually have control of the court, including her previous husband's mistress, who now was absolutely terrified because she knew the queen was coming from her. And one of her first acts of power, Catherine had Diane de Pontes banished from court. She then turned her full attention to the management of children and the dynasty. 2 years after his marriage, Francis II's marriage to Mary, Queen of Scots, and 1 year after his coronation, Francis XV died from an ear infection. So she's already lost her husband through a brain infection. She's now lost her first child through an ear infection, which obviously has traveled to the brain. His younger brother, Charles, aged 10, succeeded him, making Catherine yet again Queen Regent of France. She dominated her son and the French court, never known for showing any love or affection towards her children. Her life's work was to secure power and dynasty. With the rise of Queen Elizabeth of England and the Protestant Reformation, the Catholic popularity in France waned, and Protestants in France called, and please let me get this right, Huguenots, fought to overtake France, and eager to create a resolution, Catherine negotiated with the Queen of Navarre to arrange a marriage between their son Henry to her daughter Margaret. They agreed, but only if her son could remain Protestant. Margaret, in love with Henry de Guise, protested the marriage. This is her daughter. Catherine and King Charles had Margaret dragged from her bedroom, beaten into submission, and made the wedding take place. So she's actually got her son to get his sister and said, you're going to marry this guy whether you like it or not. When Margaret said, no, I'm in love with someone else, they dragged her out of her bedroom and beat her into submission and kept her as a prisoner. That is her mother doing it. That's very hard to swallow. In June, Catherine welcomed John d'Albert and her son to Jeanne d'Albert, sorry, my French. They must love me for that. And her son to France. Catherine presented d'Albert with a pair of perfumed gloves. Known for her love of perfumes and potions, Catherine introduced France to the elegant, fragrant, and finely made gloves. But sadly, Jeanne d'Albert died soon after her arrival, claiming Catherine poisoned the gloves that she was wearing. Now she's seen yet again to be a poisoner, not only a witch, not only a terrible mother, she's now seen as a poisoner. So as time went on, Margaret and Henry of Navarre married, making Henry the King of Navarre and Margaret his queen, and thousands of Huguenots attended the wedding, including Admiral Coligny, their leader. 2 days later, Coligny was attacked and killed, and the Huguenots blamed Catherine and her Catholic followers, and an uprising resulted in the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. Charles, some say influenced by his mother, demanded that soldiers kill everyone. Hundreds of Huguenots died in the long battle, and Catherine's name was forever associated with their deaths. When her new son-in-law, the King of Navarre, converted to Catholicism to avoid being killed, Catherine is said to have laughed at him. From then on, Huguenots branded Catherine a scheming, an evil Italian queen who stopped at nothing to have her way. The outcome of the massacre took a toll on Charles's health and his mental capacity. He blamed his mother and himself for the deaths of so many, and Catherine referred to him as her lunatic son. When Charles died at 24, some said Catherine poisoned him to make way for her favourite son, Henri, who became King Henry III upon Charles' death. Unhappy in her marriage to the King of Navarre, Margaret continued her affair with Henry de Guise and many others, and embarrassed at her daughter's behaviour. It gets worse. Catherine ordered Margaret's kidnapping and imprisonment in the south of France, where she was imprisoned for 17 years by her mother. With his mother's whisper always in his ear, Henry withdrew Margaret's inheritance and had Margaret's lover, Henry de Guise, and his family murdered at the Chateau de Blois, if that's right, forgive me if it's not. Margaret's story can be found here. Under the rule of Henry III, France fell into a spiral of decline because of the religious war that continued to rage between Catholics and Protestants, like it did in England. Unable to make peace between the two religious fractions, the Catholic lead forced Henry to acquiesce to their demands, including paying for their troops. Unable to deal with the pressure, Henry went into hiding, leaving his mother with control to sign the Treaty of Nemours, giving the Catholics power once again. After Catherine died, Henry continued his mother's legacy of ruthless rule, which eventually led to his assassination. Catherine de Medici is seen and lives on in history as a woman of controversy. Some see her as evil and wicked, a terrible mother who basically treated her children like pawns, and when they didn't do what she wanted, whipped, laughed, humiliated them, imprisoned them, and beat them. Others see them as an empowered and intelligent woman, fiercely determined to protect her family and their legacy. But she definitely influenced the history of the Medici dynasty and the Valois dynasty, France and Europeans' religious war. The reason I picked Catherine is because she has a terrible reputation as a witch. She was demonized to do like terrible things, that poisoned people, poisoned her own son. Her son, even her husband who basically died after a joust. She obviously put up being the second in his life, because the mistress, she actually encouraged him to be with his mistress because it gave her more time and control. I don't know if you've heard much of Catherine de Medici. You probably heard of the de Medici name, but when I saw the restaurant in Calgary named after it by an Italian family, she was seen to be someone they admired, a woman who took power, a woman who took control, didn't suffer fools gladly. If she wanted someone gone, they were gone. And she's seen as a wicked queen. And it's really funny that when England was going through this with Mary Tudor, and Mary Tudor was seen as evil, Elizabeth was seen as good. She was Protestant, and the Catholics were evil. And then here we are with Catherine. Catholics are evil. The Protestants are good. And even Mary, Queen of Scots, who was her daughter-in-law for a short time, and Catherine hated Mary, absolutely hated her, couldn't wait to get rid of her. When her son died, she was like, send that woman back to Scotland. And obviously, you know what happens there, because Mary, Queen of Scots, stayed Catholic, and obviously was later beheaded by Elizabeth I. So politics has played a lot. Religion has played a lot in these women's lives. They've been used as pawns to further their family's dynasty, to further money and power. And basically, they've gone on to do the same thing. I've got to marry a good marriage. I've got to have my children. I've got to push them forward. They are a victim of their time. However, I do think there's more to Catherine de Medici. I think she was capable of quite a few things. The more I read about her, I think she's very sad in lots of ways. but I also think she was a woman who was quite, to drink the urine of pregnant mules and wear a talisman of goat's blood, metals, and human blood. This lady would stop at nothing to get what she wanted, and she got what she wanted.
But I feel like I said earlier, different people have different opinions of what makes a king or queen great, or evil or ruthless, or but I think it also takes a certain type of person to rule.
Yes,
Because you have to be able to do things that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And I think there's only certain people are born for certain things. And back then, if you were a daughter, you were raised to be, if you were a noble daughter, you were raised to be a wife to someone.
Exactly.
If you were a son, you were raised to rule your father's, land.
Well, women
I
didn't
mean,
get
you were raised to be king.
exactly, and women didn't keep their power because if they married, it
Yeah.
was given to their husband, which is probably why Elizabeth I never married.
And I think that it takes those certain times when the kings just didn't have a son, but they had a daughter.
Yes.
It takes a certain kind of king to train their daughter to become queen, instead of, to take over their rule, instead of just going on down the line to nephews or whatever.
Yeah.
And there were, good kings that taught their daughters how to rule.
Well, look at Mary Tudor. I mean, like her father was Henry VIII. I mean, she had to be, she had to be seen as strong and follow in his footsteps. So, who's your last wicked queen that you've got, Val?
It is Queen Isabella I.
Ah, bring it on. Tell us about her.
She was born in 1451. A little bit about it. She was born in 1451. She was the daughter of John II of Castile and his second wife, Isabella of Portugal. 3 years after her birth, her half brother became king, Henry IV. Despite the fact that she had a younger brother and that her early years were spent quietly with her mother, Isabella was soon drawn into Castilian politics. She was brought to court when she was 13, and she caught the eye of a king. 13. That just blows my mind. She ended up, well, it was King Alfonso. Her father wanted her to marry King Alfonso. She did not want to marry King Alfonso. She wanted to marry King Ferdinand II of Aragon. So she pretty much just dug her heels in, and finally she secretly married King Ferdinand, and who was her cousin. And she married him in 1469. Most people know Queen Isabella because she sponsored Christopher Columbus. She's the queen that sponsored Christopher
People might remember
Columbus.
the film 1492 with Sigourney Weaver, who
Yeah.
played that role, and Gerard Depardieu, who was Christopher Columbus.
Yeah. I didn't know this till I read it. Bless you. Isabella was a pious Catholic. She believed it was necessary to ensure I can't say that word. Doctrinal.
Doctor,
Yeah, I can't say it.
don't worry.
Uniformity in the church, and with her husband, King Ferdinand, they started the Spanish Inquisition in 1478. It was dictated that all Jews and Muslims in Spain either convert to Christianity or be exiled. Now that doesn't sound bad.
No.
Convert or be exiled.
I would definitely pick the exile.
But if anyone doesn't know about the Spanish Inquisition,
Yeah.
The Spanish Inquisition was known for torture of suspected heretics, suspension of their rights and property, and the guilty being burnt at the stake. So it might have started out by them writing convert or be exiled, but that's not what went on. The Spanish Inquisition actually lasted from 1478 to 1834. Punishments also included the rack. The rack was, for anybody that don't know, it was an open rectangular wooden frame with rollers or bars on each end. The wrists were tied to one roller at the top, ankles to the one at the bottom. And it was pretty much, the rope was wrapped around it, and they would turn it and it would pull you.
I have one in the other room.
Oh, you do? Okay. See, I have the pulley in here.
In fact, the rack is very famous because at the Tower of London, obviously, there is the rack, and you can actually go and see the rack, and it's quite phenomenal to see it.
Well, there are three famous ones. One was the rack. The second one just sends shivers up my back because this would hurt so much. It's called the pulley.
Yeah.
Okay, your hands were tied behind your back. Then a rope was tied to your hands that were behind you. The rope was then put over a pulley system. You were pulled up into the air from your wrists in the back. They got you off the floor, and then they would allow you to drop and then stop it real quick so it would jerk. That hurts me to just say it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know how it feels when you've got your hands behind your back and then you pull up on them.
Yes.
I mean, I can't imagine. The third way was waterboarding. And we did talk about this a little bit with the witch trials. It's pretty much they stick a cloth in your mouth and then pour water on the cloth, and it simulates drowning. Well, they're pretty much drowning you is what they're doing.
Awful way to go.
The Spanish Inquisition, it was decided that there were 30,000 to 300,000 Jews killed during the Spanish Inquisition.
Wow.
So, Isabella, she did a lot of good for you know, the for her dominion, but she also did some really heinous things.
Yes.
And you know, even though you know you have to take the good with the bad, it's just it's hard for me to even look at the good on a lot of things, because the things that these women did were so horrible.
Yes.
And it wasn't, you know, they didn't twist their arm and make them do it. It was their decisions, you know, to do
But
this.
they also see the thing is, you and I look at it now and we say, oh my God, that's awful. How could you do that to another human being? They saw that people deserve this, that
Yeah,
when they put these punishments out there, they deserve it. You know,
yeah.
they are guilty of whatever crime it was. And torture was the way to get the answers, or to make you repent
Or
or
to, yeah,
punish.
make them convert. I mean, now we see it as, you know, it wouldn't be an honest conversion if you're like stringing someone up by their arms twisted back behind their head and up, and they're gonna, you know, not all, some are gonna say, oh yes, I convert, just to stop the torture. And I mean, I don't know why they didn't see that, you know, as false. You know, just let them leave,
Yes.
you know, convert or leave.
Religion is so important at this time in
Yeah.
history. It's so
Yeah.
important. I mean, it's like you're a mortal soul.
But they
And
really, did they really think they were saving these people?
I suppose they believed they were, or at least they saw it, that if they did not convert to what they believed in, to the Holy Mother Church, and that has a lot to answer for. I'm really sorry, but it does.
Yeah.
Then too bad. I mean, you only have to look at the Colosseum in Italy to see how many Christians were put to their death, and
Mm.
you know, the Catholic Church tries to say, I'm really sorry now for all that. Well, it's a bit late. It's a bit late for that now.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell the ones that were eaten by lions and, you know, forced to do all these things. I can't imagine living in a time when people could just force you to do pretty much whatever the hell they wanted you to do.
And there's a woman, I think there's a woman thinking of another woman actually allowing this to happen. And she was formidable. Isabella of Castile was formidable. She's seen as a very formidable woman.
Well, you know, I do have to give some, you know, props to them, because you did have to be a pretty strong woman to take a throne back then.
You do.
I mean, you would have to now, but now it would be more intelligent and cunning and, you know, more on the brain side. Back then, you pretty much had to watch your back, you know, from anybody.
Yeah.
And you had to literally take knife in hand if someone got in your way, or the way of your sons or daughters. You know, you had to do what you had to do.
What made you pick Isabella?
You know, once I started reading about her, I think it was mainly the fact that she wanted what she wanted, and she even defied her father to get what she wanted, you know, and along with her husband, you know, it wasn't like her husband passed, she went nuts and did all this, or he wasn't there, or whatever. They were together on this. They ruled together.
Yeah.
And they started the Spanish Inquisition together. You know, I think in both cases, and it sounds strange, but in both cases, you know, they found their equal.
Yes.
You know, Elizabeth Bathory, she wouldn't have done, I don't think, what she did if her husband had not allowed it before he died. And I don't think she would have continued to do it after he had passed away if it wasn't already there. And for some reason, I feel like he maybe not necessarily just allowed it, but he kind of nurtured that side of her.
Well, I think they both believed in their cause.
Sure.
And I know when the Pope said to them, you know, he declared they were Catholic monarchs. They were true Catholic monarchs. I think they believed so much in what they were doing. But the problem is, I cannot imagine living in that time. Although, having said that, looking at current events in life today, if you're on the wrong side of the road, or the wrong side of the decision, or you're on the wrong side of the narrative or the norm, then that could start its own Spanish Inquisition.
I think it's pushing back. I think we're pushing back to the way it used to be.
Yeah.
You know, you either believe the way I do,
yes,
or I'm going to make you believe the way I do.
And by looking at this historically, we haven't really learned much, because it's all about control. I mean, you look at women of power, as you say, you have your vice president, you know, who basically, I think she came up with a statement recently about, and I've got to bring it up because I actually can't remember it 100%. I've had a busy week, but it's like, I think sometimes when we look at history, we need to learn from it so that we don't carry on it today. I'm just trying to bring up that statement, which she actually said. Without actually, I'm trying to find it what it is, but I'll find it in a minute. What happened to Isabella in the end? What was her outcome?
Hang on, I've already closed my book.
Got it?
No. Hold on a minute. Why didn't I write it down?
Let's bring it up. Isabella of Spain. Let's have a look at her. Beautiful woman. Very beautiful woman. Long blonde hair.
She was.
Long blonde hair, blue eyes. She was very, very pretty.
Let's see.
She had she was the mother of Catherine of Aragon.
Yes.
So you're actually talking about Mary Tudor's grandmother.
Right.
So formidable woman, Catherine of Aragon, formidable. Mary Tudor wants to carry on that line by being formidable as well.
One of her achievements in her last decade was the success of Ferdinand, she and Ferdinand, him acting on her initiative, extended their authority over the military orders of, Santiago, Calatrava, and another one that I can't pronounce.
Apparently, she said that she bragged she only bathed twice in her whole life, Isabella of Spain. She must have smelled lovely.
Probably smelled like Elizabeth's house.
But I mean, thanks to her, Columbus did, which is kind of weird because here we are talking from the UK and America. You're actually in the country, you know, that Columbus discovered, thanks to Isabella of Spain. Even when she wasn't like wrecking and pulling other people apart, but I also think as well that you can see why her daughter and granddaughter wanted to follow in her footsteps.
Right. She died in 1504. She ruled 2 kingdoms jointly from 1479 with her husband Ferdinand II. The rule affected the permanent union of Spain and the beginning of an overseas empire in the New World, led by Christopher Columbus under her sponsorship.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she did accomplish good things, even though, you know, Christopher Columbus didn't discover anything. There was people already there. But besides that,
I mean, it's interesting. The women we've picked, they're kind of all around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Very political, very religious time of history. Looking at some of the other queens before we go into Afterglow, just to bring up some of them very briefly. There was the Empress Julia Agrippina of Rome. She was the sister of Emperor Caligula and the mother of Emperor Nero. She got rid of all the men in her life, wise woman, starting with her second husband, whom she poisoned, so she then could marry her uncle, Emperor Claudius, poisoning him then in attack of jealousy, competing for attention. And before poisoning Claudius, Agrippina, convinced him to adopt his son Nero from the first marriage and name him his successor. Nero came to the throne as a teenager, while Agrippina ruled in his name, which led Nero to banish her. After several attempts to end his life, including a boat designed to sink, he finally executed his beloved mother.
Yep.
She was Empress Julia Agrippina of Rome. My goodness. There's one for you. There's also
Maria Eleonora.
Yep.
She was kind of, it was not a good thing. She was kind of one of those full of herself queens.
Yep.
She tried many times to have kids. She had, if I remember correctly, she had 2 miscarriages, 1 daughter that passed away. I think she was about a year old. She was born in 1599. She married her uncle to ensure to ensure her line to the throne.
Blood was pure.
Exactly. I was trying to find exactly what it was. I do believe this is the one that had, she finally had a daughter, but she would, before she had children, she would go to plays and, you know, she had She loved watching people act that had disabilities. Dwarfism, or
Yeah.
how they had disabilities.
Yeah.
So it was kind of ironic when she finally had a daughter. Her name was Christina. Her daughter had, and I can't think of the name of it, but she had a lot of hair everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
The minute her mother saw her, she called her a monster. She had tried so hard to have a boy. Then she had a girl, plus the girl had something wrong with her. So she pretty much just, didn't have anything to do with her. So the king gave Christina, the daughter, to his sister to raise. She became his, what's it called, the queen. It's not, I don't know, I can't think of the name of it, but it's like when they're in line, like next in line for the
An heir to the throne.
right. She, she was called Mad. They called her the Mad Queen. She tried everything, to have a son, to get a son, to have an heir, and then, she had this daughter that she literally hated from the
Yes.
minute she saw her. She pushed her down the stairs. She would do things to her to hurt her. She would tie her up from her limbs, hang her like from her limbs, and then tie weights to her.
Daughter.
She was horrible to her. I was trying to think. She is the daughter of Anna, who was the Duchess of Prussia, which is now Russia.
Yeah.
So her mother was like her. She was very unbalanced. So I think that's why, maybe it was hereditary. She ended up being just like her mother. Yeah. She ended up being mad like her mother was.
To do that to her own child is just beyond belief. I just want to bring in this Queen Rani Laksh. I'm going to pronounce this if this kills me. Queen Rani Lakshmi Bai of India. She led the Great Indian Rebellion in 1857 against the British imperial government. According to historians, she threw herself into battle with the reins in her teeth and a sword in each hand, and besieged the fort, where she massacred every British man, woman, and child. The commander of the British Navy used artillery to disarm the rebellion, but was astonished by it, calling it the Joan of Indian Arc. There are so many women we could have brought up. We could have talked about Catherine the Great. We could have talked about the Queen Tamara of Georgia, and also Empress Wu Zetian of China. There was a lot of women we could have talked up. We've just picked a few because I think if we look at what we're talking about, that time, women and religion and politics and keeping the dynasty and about having children, but to actually crucify your children by torturing them and mentally and imprisoning them and torturing them and beating them and into submission. Terrible, terrible things to do. We hope you've enjoyed some of the wicked queens that have been in this world, and I hope that we never see some of their like again. Actually, as you say, some of them are seen as empowered women, others seen as very much victims of their time.
And I think it just depends on who you talk to.
Absolutely. It's interesting subject. We could have talked about many more, but Val and I picked it too. It's a good way to come back, a very good subject for us to come back in. Just going to switch the banner over onto this one, which now comes on to Afterglow. Next week, we will be back. And I think it's time that we have a different subject. And I think we should talk about a subject that people have been asking us to talk about for quite a long time. And I think we're going to have to bite the bullet and talk about that one, pardon the pun.
Right.
And Carly will be back with us next week. And I'm sure she's going to come back just in time for that. I'll see if we can get Kay in as well. But, you know, looking at a woman being in today's world and some of the queens, I mean, Queen Elizabeth II, you know, was on the throne for a very long time. Queen Elizabeth I, very good reputations they have. Hopefully, just looking at where we've come from, we never, ever want to go back into a time where religion and politics dictate, which sadly they do, especially our children's future lives coming up. So it's very important that we learn from the past. This week, Val, let's have a look, because there's been a kind of change in schedule. Everyone's been on holiday and now we're coming back. What's happening this week? What do we know? What's coming up?
I honestly don't know if Scotty will be back, but he's on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Yeah. And then Sunday mornings. I know he was on this morning, so.
He was on this morning, but I think he said he may or may not be back tomorrow because it's your bank holiday tomorrow. We had ours last week, and now it's your one.
Now, will you all be back Tuesday?
We are back, yes. Robertson will be back on Tuesday. I spoke to him today, and he's assured me that we are coming back. We will be back at 10 p.m. UK time, let me get this right, 3 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Central, 5 Eastern. Is that right?
That's right.
I'm getting there. It's only taken me how many years to do that? And then I think Scotty's back Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with the Intrepid Radio, and I'm going to spank his bottom for not promoting Wicked Women because we promote him, and I will spank him for that on Tuesday. And then Ken, is he back this week, Val?
I don't know. He comes back when he takes a wild hair.
Yeah.
So if he gets up and decides to do it, he'll do it. But he always puts out a banner. He usually comes on at 9. So just if you catch the banner, see him on, then you know he's on. That's about the only way you can see him.
You know, it's kind of fun because I must admit I'd switch on sometimes on an afternoon and I think, oh, Ken's on. And it's really interesting to see it. But apparently he is back tomorrow with KB. Ken Ballos, KB on Facebook. You can find him under Ken Ballos. We still keep trying to get him on to YouTube, but so far he's not bitten that bullet either. So I'm sure Terry will be there, won't they?
Oh, I'm sure. And then Saturday, I will be back. I'm not sure if Emily will be with me or not. She might. Megan, I'm not sure. But I know I will be. I'll be back.
We're back with Wicked Women. I mean, Val and I hope to be joined by Carly. Carly's daughter has been unwell, Kinsey. And hopefully she's doing a lot better because I know Carly's chomping at the bit to come back, and I know Kay's trying to come on as well. We are the original 4 of Wicked Women. Sometimes our lives dictate that we can be here. Sometimes our lives dictate we can't. So Val and I are we're your regulars. We're here. Val, what's your week like? Anything exciting happening?
I have started making fall and Halloween
Fantastic.
epoxy things. I have coasters, candle holders. Um, I'm going to start trying to take a few pictures, put them on Facebook. So
And you
if
can find
anybody's interested in Halloween or fall stuff, let me know.
well, Halloween's been out in the stores here since July, and it's so depressing because, like, now it's coming into September. You think, oh, I really want to do all the Halloween stuff now. But no, now we're moving the Halloween stuff out and we're bringing in Christmas
Yeah.
because that's what you do in September. You bring the Christmas stock in, and really don't want to do that. We want to like bring in the Halloween. Someone
I
said to me
do.
the other day, why do I like Halloween so much? And I have to be honest, my answer was, it just feels natural to celebrate it as a kid all the
Yeah.
way up to now. No one told me about Halloween. I was just drawn to it.
Yeah, I've always loved Halloween, and my girls do. It's just one of those things that we just enjoy.
I think we should look
We
at that.
enjoy that aesthetic
Yeah.
in our everyday lives. You know, a lot of what we have and what, we like in our regular decor is what most people would have at Halloween. So, it's our aesthetic. But I just started doing the Halloween things. But I'll be doing Thanksgiving things. Then I'll start at Christmas. I'm not doing Christmas yet.
No,
I can't
and
do it.
neither am
I
I.
can't make myself do it.
I'm going to enjoy the autumnal of September and October and
I,
early November.
I think autumn is it's like one of my favorite times of year. I
It
mean,
just feels
orange is my
right.
favorite color, so it's like you see it all over the place.
I'm so happy when August gets to halfway through and I'm like, yes, it's almost no, it is a shame because obviously I enjoy the summer and it's lovely to be out,
Yeah.
enjoying the sun, although I don't enjoy the heat. But with autumn, it's kind of that cozy. There's pumpkin spice everywhere.
Oh gosh, yes.
All the stores and everything's there.
My leaves are starting to change
They
in
are
my
here.
backyard, so
We are
I'm hoping it's a pretty one like it was last year. So
I'm really hoping to get to Calgary this year and actually see. It'll be the late part of autumn by the time I get there, but I'm really hoping to do that. So we will be back next week. It's going to be a really good show next week. It's never a good show, but Val and I, if you stay behind, Val will have a quick chat about that. But this subject has been asked right from the start.
I think from the minute we decided to do this,
talked about it, it's like I think we're going to have to bite this bullet, and we are going to have to talk. We've kind of wanted a crew to come on, so we've got the different girls coming on. So I'm going to try really hard to get Kay if she can come in, and Carly, although Carly's going to be hilarious on that subject.
Oh wow,
I might need to sit back and just off you go, Carly.
Yeah, we may have to put a collar on her.
I think we might have to just pull a hook and pull her back. But I think it'll be quite an interesting show. So look out for the promo. I will try and get it out early. If not, it will be around next Saturday and Sunday. Once again, thank you for joining us. It's good to be back. On this Sunday, if you can't have a bit of Wicked. Val, love you lots. Lovely to see you. Mwah.
I love you.
I love you
and
too.
Thank you, guys. We love you. We love you. We do.
Thanks for coming back. A lot of people said, when is Wicked Women coming back? When is Wicked Women coming back? We were like, we're coming back in September. Here you are, 1st of September, and we are here. Actually, it's almost the 2nd for me. So before I take this lovely banner out and bring on the titles, let's take this one out now. I will see you if you stay there, Val, I'll see you afterwards.
Okay.
Wishing everybody a very good week. Enjoy your first week of September. May it be lucky. May you feel lots of blessed. And we will see you next week, and take care of yourselves and each other. Bye.
Bye.